Imagine the situation. A single mother on the eve of the all-winter holidays buys an apartment in the city center from a person famous across the entire country. Everything seems fine, preparations are underway, it feels so light and joyful, and the new year 2026 is eagerly anticipated. Early in the morning as usual, the woman checks her mailbox. Ads, bills, a card summons ads, then steps outside into the crisp, invigorating freeze. Wait, a card summons? She reads the summons and finds out that the real estate deal for the apartment she bought from this person will be annulled because the seller claims that he sold the apartment under the influence of fraudsters and that all the money was transferred to them accordingly. As a result, a long card battle begins in which only one will emerge victorious. Happy New Year, happy new luck. Intriguing, isn't it? Originally a different idea for the video was planned, but this story forced me to bring it to the forefront because, come on guys, this is absolute cinema. Greetings internet citizens, welcome to the world where greed and justice stand over an abyss staring at each other waiting for a single push. And what if I told you that the situation described above actually happened, and quite recently? Today's video will focus on the so-called Dolina effect, a fraudulent scheme that has already managed to become a new meme, a legal term, a political issue, and a powerful collective effect. And you might ask, why is the fraudulent scheme named after a popular Russian pop singer? Everything in due time. Larisa Alexandrovna Dolina is a Soviet and Russian pop singer and actress. The 70-year-old artist has more than 20 film roles to her name, and her voice has appeared in over 70 feature-length and animated films. She is fluent in English and has released 5 studio albums in it. I was genuinely surprised when I discovered that over her entire career she has released a total of 23 studio albums. Scorpions have fewer. She's also involved in politics. Since 2003 she has been a member of the United Russia Party, the party so to speak closest to the president of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin. Larisa Dolina's own reputation, her repeated rudeness and mockery on numerous TV shows makes her a convenient target for hate, as she is often perceived as a wicked, unfair and negative character.
Если я нарушила, если очень сильно нарушил мой водитель, то мы очень сильно извиняемся, но меня не штрафуют за это. Я же вам объяснила, почему.
She openly promotes the Russian authorities, which is why she was included in the list of corrupt individuals and warmongers. Even my home country Latvia banned her entry in 2022 for the very same reason. At the beginning of 2024, the singer sold her elite 5-room apartment around 200 square meters located in the center of Moscow in the Hamovniki district. The buyer was a 35-year-old single mother named Polina Lurie. Her father is a director of well-known IT company, while she herself is an entrepreneur in the real estate sector. The deal amounted to approximately $1.5 million USA, which I should note is about half of the apartment's market value. Moreover, at the singer's initiative, the payment was made in cash in the presence of a bank employee. After the transaction was completed in August, the singer recorded a video statement in which she claimed that she had sold the apartment under pressure from phone scammers who were posing as law enforcement officers, and that she had handed over all the money to them.
Я стала жертвой мошенников. В отношении меня совершены очень изощренные и спланированные мошеннические действия. По данному факту возбуждено уголовное дело.
According to the official version, in April 2024, scammers contacted Larisa Dolina and convinced her to take part in a special operation, within which she was supposed to fictitiously sell her apartment. Otherwise, she was told the apartment would be confiscated for debts and her family would be evicted. After the scammers were caught, Dolina filed a lawsuit to declare the transaction invalid. In response, a shocked Polina Lurie filed a counterclaim. As a result, the district court ruled that the apartment sale transaction was invalid. The apartment was returned to Larisa Dolina, while Polina Lurie was left not only without the apartment but also without any compensation. The court stated that the singer was not obliged to return the money to the buyer since Lurie could independently seek compensation from the scammers. The scammers were sentenced to between 4 and 7 years in prison, while Lurie appealed to the Supreme Court to have the case reviewed. You might think that the wealthy Larisa Dolina, like a real Mother Teresa, decided to meet the buyer halfway and offer compensation, at least a minimal one. Well, that was not the case. To say that the internet exploded afterward would be an understatement. For some time, Dolina did not comment on the situation with the apartment and later described the scandal surrounding her name as an attack by paid bots, advising the haters to collect money for Lurie themselves. After that, the singer began to face a mass boycott from companies, audiences, and even colleagues. For example, the Moscow restaurant Cafe Pushkin removed information about Larisa Dolina's New Year's performance from its its website and social media. Tickets for the event, however, were priced at $1,000 USA. Instead of the singer, the program featured a gypsy performance, a string quartet, and a cover band. Equivalently indeed. People have been returning tickets to Dolina's concerts. For example, at her performance in Vladivostok on November 28, the number of unsold tickets increased from 25 to 224. She also lost several corporate events in Dubai, each of which could have earned her up to $37,000 USA. Russian actor and singer Nikita Jigurda called Dolina a greedy toad. In his opinion, she robbed innocent people by taking away $1.5 million. Russian singer Slava said that because of the so-called Dolina effect, she encountered difficulties when trying to sell her own property. Residents of Moscow began bringing sleepers, keys, and other household items to the building in Hamovniki, where Dolina's apartment is located, supporting a tongue-in-cheek legend that this brings good luck when buying apartments. Even Burger King announced that it is temporarily excluding Dolina's building from its delivery zone and that the measure would remain until Pauline Laurier gets her money back. Dolina took part in an advertisement for a real estate lottery, but amid the backlash she was cut from the campaign, which would have been a decent bit of self-irony.
Поздравляю всех участников и победителей жилищной лотереи. Это большое счастье, что такой проект существует. Играйте и выигрывайте.
And as always, social media users reacted in the most time-tested way possible, through memes.
I was just trying to explain to someone how Dolina ended up with both the apartment and the money, and according to the court, she shouldn't have to return anything to the buyer. And in the process, I realized that I don't understand anything myself.
Larisa Dolina is trying to discreetly sell her apartment again.
I was under the influence of the fraudsters.
I was under the influence of the fraudsters, therefore I consider the Treaty on the Dissolution of the Soviet Union to be invalid.
On December 5, after the public backlash, the singer announced that she would return the money for the apartment, but stated that she did not currently have that. In response, Laurier rejected the offer, noting that Dolina proposed to repay the money in small installments over 3 years without accounting for inflation.
У меня нет этих денег, но я сделаю все возможное. И я говорю сейчас, заявляю на всю страну, что я эти деньги Полине Лурье верну в полном объеме.
On December 16, the Supreme Court was held for a full review of the case, so what was ultimately decided? We'll get to that a little later. So why did the fraudulent scheme end up being named after Dolina, even though the scheme existed long before her case and was not particularly well known? It all comes down to the so-called scapegoat effect. A group redirects its anger toward a figure that is easiest to blame, even if that figure is not the main source of the problem. Dolina is a person with a widely recognized name among the Russian population, and when her name appears in a situation like this, it becomes, so to speak, a collective image, a common noun that personifies the phenomenon. Psychologically, it's easier to direct anger at one vivid recognizable figure than at abstract institutions. In this case, the Russian judicial system. As an analogy, I can refer to the expression Pyrrhic victory, a victory that is essentially close to defeat. For example, in modern realities, a career at the cost of family when a person achieves professional success but loses connection with relatives. The expression refers to the name of an ancient Greek king because his name has become a generalization of such phenomenon. I think I have managed to convey my point. As I mentioned earlier, the scheme is not new. Court rulings ordering the return of apartments existed even before the Dolina case, but they did not attract much attention. At least 10 similar cases were recorded in 2022. However, after the Dolina situation, a scaling effect occurred. Lawyers and real estate agents began speaking about dozens and even hundreds of similar cases. Buyers started to fear that even a notarized purchase guarantees nothing. Courts increasingly side with the seller. Moral and legal protection is a significant factor, and when the victim of fraud is a person with popularity and influence, even more so. Overall, in 2025, about 3,000 families were affected by the scheme. Buyers were left without money and without housing, and for most of them, after the court ruling, long-term loans remained as well. Moreover, in 2025, there were recorded cases in which purchased cars were also taken back by analogy with the Dolina effect, so there are even more victims.
I will take your Volkswagen Passat.
Even weapon skins in the game Counter-Strike was subject subjected to similar schemes, especially expensive, very expensive ones. It is unsurprising that such a dangerous trend led to changes in Russian legislation. Lawyers and real estate specialists now advise demanding additional guarantees during transactions, certificates of the seller's mental health, the presence of relatives, confirmation that the seller was not under pressure and was not a victim of fraud, as well as including special clauses in the contract, for example stating that the seller certifies,
I was not under the influence of third parties and no one forced me.
Moreover, people selling property online now even write, the owner is not Dolina. All of this is of course sad and depressing, but I want to point out that there have been cases where buyers nevertheless managed to successfully defend themselves against claims for the return of real estate. In February 2024, a professional real estate agent Anna saw an advertisement for the sale of a two-room apartment. Anna and her husband Kirill own their own real estate agency. The couple buys apartments, renovates them, and then sells them at a higher price. The apartment was put up for sale by a 65-year-old pensioner Natalia. The parties agreed on a price of $111,000 USA. The payment was made, Natalia gave a receipt confirming she had received the money, signed the Acceptance and Transfer Act, and handed over the keys to the apartment to the buyer. Later she contacted the police claiming that she had become a victim of fraud and filed a lawsuit to declare transaction invalid. The pensioner lost the case. But why? First, Anna and Kirill asked her to provide proof if Natalia owed another apartment, as well as certificates from neuropsychiatric and narcological clinic. All of this was done. Second, the couple asked whether the elderly woman was acting under the influence of delusion. The pensioner, of course, assured them that everything was fine. Third, shortly before the deal, the pensioner had sold her second apartment to relatives, which already looks rather suspicious. Fourth, the woman claimed that she had not received the full amount from the sale. She said $37,000 were missing, but I remind you she had assigned documents confirming receipt of the full sum. As a result, the plaintiff provided no evidence that the purchase and sale agreement was a sham transaction or that it had been concluded by the seller under the influence of deception. In this case, the fraudster was not particularly clever, but the couple understood the specifics of their profession well and therefore secured additional guarantees for themselves. However, there was a similar case to Dolina's, only with the roles reversed. The celebrity was the buyer and not the seller, and it all took place not in Russia but in the United States of America. The case of American singer Katherine Hudson, better known by the stage name Katy Perry, you know, the one who kisses girls. In 2020, Katy Perry purchased a mansion from an 85-year-old veteran Carl Westcott in Montecito, California. The transactions amounted to $15 million USA. Shortly after the deal, Westcott attempted to annul it, claiming that after surgery he had been under the influence of strong painkillers and was unable to make conscious decisions. The legal proceedings lasted several years, but ultimately the court confirmed the transaction as valid, as it could not find evidence that Carol was under the influence of medication at the time the deal was concluded. Moreover, Westcott was ordered to pay Perry $2 million USA to cover legal fees as a compensation for lost profits, since the singer was unable to rent out the house and earn income. The media referred to this situation as a foreign Dolina syndrome or the Katy Perry syndrome, but in reverse. Here it is, the momentous day, December 16, the review of the case in the Supreme Court. The battle was not an easy one, even without Dolina, who did not appear in the courtroom. For almost 3 hours people were able to watch the court proceedings online, even though Dolina's representatives insisted on a closed hearing, but their request was denied. After all the statements and facts presented in the case, the Supreme Court declared that the lower courts in the Dolina case had committed a violation by denying Luria compensation, thereby violating the principle of justice. So how did the case review ultimately end? Drumroll. The court delivered its verdict. It cancelled the ruling in the case concerning Larisa Dolina's apartment, thereby ordering that the apartment remain with Paulina Luria. As experts stated, no further claims in this case will be considered. The outcome of this decision may also determine whether the sellers will continue to deceive buyers using the so-called Dolina scheme. Victory, citizens, there is justice in favor of people at the lower end of hierarchy. Dolina's words after the verdict were as follows. Well, looks like the paid boss could not handle it, so she had to act herself. You really let down, internet. Truly a case indeed of seeking copper and finding gold. I was simply scrolling through my feed on Instagram and sometimes came across posts featuring Dolina. At first I thought it was some kind of post-irony, but the posts were published by official verified accounts, so I began to doubt that. After reviewing all the available material, I immediately chose it as the topic for my next video, and I did not regret it because it is a diamond itself. After everything you've heard, who do you think Larisa Dolina is in this conflict, a victim or an accomplice? There is an opinion online that Dolina used her connections to set up the buyer. You know, this theory has a right to exist. First, Dolina is eccentric like most influential people. She will step over others if it benefits her, as she once stated herself.
I am very stubborn. If I want something, I will get it, no matter what.
Second, Dolina is a celebrity and a member of a party that praises the president, so certain institutions may treat her in a special way. Moreover, she may be well aware of how the Russian judicial system operates. Third, Dolina is wealthy, and the fact that she refused to compensate Pauline Luria for the loss of the apartment, even while being under the spotlight of the mass media, is at least suspicious. I'm not even talking about the full amount, but at least some part of it. The fact that she agreed to repay the money in installments only after public pressure does not count. Fourth, in my opinion, she simply has nothing left to lose. The career is fading, invitations to appear are becoming fewer, and in order to somehow make herself known again, she signed herself to this venture. Remember people whose names returned to the public eye because of some scandal involving them? Yes, it's black PR, but famous people will do anything to be noticed again, even if it turns them into the laughingstock. You are free to judge for yourselves, but I doubt that she simply did not want to compensate anything, even though she was not obligated to. Moreover, I think she fully realized that she could turn into an object of common hatred, someone everyone would be talking about for a while until the situation died down. I'm a living example. I only remembered her after all of this happened. Yes, that's exactly how black PR works. And in this story, I also consider Pauline Luria to be partly at fault, because one must always be on guard when dealing with such scandal-prone individuals. She knew from whom she was buying the apartment since she met Dolina personally and handed the money. If she fully understood what kind of person she was buying the property from, then the price, which as I remind you was half of the market value, should have raised concerns as well. She should have insisted on obtaining a certificate from a neuropsychiatric clinic, especially since Dolina voluntarily refused to provide one. Moreover, she is an entrepreneur and should have suspected something was wrong from the very beginning, even if a person like Dolina is famous and therefore inspires a sense of security. But on the other hand, again, speculating this could have only played into Dolina's hands in her intentions. The moral of this story is following: we are all driven by self-interest regardless of our status or position. We are all stubborn and never betray our views and beliefs. Yet at the same time, we always feel vulnerable about the decisions we have made. The ones we believed were right. That's all for today. It turned out to be fairly brief, but I believe I conveyed the point as clearly as possible. Thank you once again for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button, leave comments and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future videos. I've also left some links in the channel description. Subscriptions, they are welcome as well. And now I'm off to personally sort things out with Dolina. Knife for extra coolness just in case. See you, brothers and sisters. Adios.
Какой прогноз у нас сегодня в доме? Я 113 лямов просрала, но я вертела всех, идите на...